Hi, my friends, and welcome back to the show. Today, we are joined by our guest, Mindi Kessler. Mindi is a marriage and family therapist and author of the book Cycle Breaker, a guide to transcending childhood trauma. Mindi helps people heal the root cause of their suffering, break their cycles of self-sabotage and negative habits, and reclaim their life by addressing their childhood experiences that led them to where they are today. In this conversation, we talk about the link between our relationship with food, our bodies, and the way we were raised, one of the most important pillars of trauma recovery, why body image issues serve a purpose, and how to see your body as an ally instead of an enemy, how to break the cycle of generational dieting, food issues, and body shame so that your kids grow up with a positive relationship with food and their bodies, the very first step to healing your own childhood wounds, and finally, one simple habit you can start your morning with to slow down your mind, and so much more. Now, if you love this episode, make sure to share it with someone who needs to hear this. And now let's jump into today's interview. Welcome to the show, Mindi. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. I'm just delighted to have the chance to talk with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to jump right in. We were talking right before, and you were telling me how your own childhood trauma led you into the career path that you took and how it affected your health. And so I really want to talk today about the concept of being a cycle breaker, especially when it comes to dieting and body issues, because I work with so many women who all have the same history of my mom was on Weight Watchers growing up. I always heard my mom saying saying negative things about her body and about food. And of course, we're a blank slate when we're born. We're a blank slate, and we literally just are conditioned to believe the things that we're exposed to. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your childhood and how that affected your own health and well-being into your adulthood?
As far as my childhood goes, I knew it was very difficult, but it took me well into my adult years to realize just how difficult it was. Because when we experience a lot of hardship growing up, we cope by suppressing how we feel and living in denial. And it was really through my health symptoms that I came in contact with my understanding about what I experienced growing up. Starting about the age of 18, I had chronic pelvic pain. And I went from doctor to doctor trying to figure out what was wrong, and literally no one could tell me. And so over the course of 30 years, I had additional health symptoms on top of that: chronic migraines, digestive issues, burning hands and feet syndrome, burning mouth syndrome, just all kinds of really complicated symptoms. And on top of that, I was very depressed. I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of perfectionism. And so for so many years, I kept trying to find an answer, like, why am I suffering so much? And it really took my health crash about 10 years ago before I could finally get to really the root cause of why I'd been suffering so much, both physically and emotionally. And I uncovered this story of growing up that involved way more trauma than I had realized, because our minds will protect us by repressing things that are just too overwhelming for us to bear. So my childhood trauma affected my health because when we are under high levels of stress, we cope by suppressing it all, like I mentioned, but we also are in a chronic fight-flight state, which puts us puts us in a position where we're unable to properly digest food, because we can't both be fighting for our life and managing things that are less critical for our survival. And so in my own practice, I work with people who also have a lot of chronic health issues, and they don't realize that the root of that comes from what they experienced growing up.
Mm.
And so a lot of the work I do with people is to teach them how to tune into the symptoms that they're experiencing, and to use the wisdom embedded in the pain and the extra weight and whatever symptoms they don't like, however they're rejecting their body, is really important information to lead them towards healing themselves.
Yeah. So how did you come to that conclusion that all of these health issues that you were experiencing could be associated to the experiences you had growing up?
It was really complicated because now there's more material out there. You know, the book, The Body Keeps the Score, when the body says no, all these great books that are helping to connect those dots. But back when I was really beginning my own journey of healing, there wasn't that information out there. But I started learning about law of attraction and how powerful your mindset is. And so I listened to an interview with this woman who encouraged people who are working on their health to start just saying the words perfect health healing now throughout the day as a way of conditioning the mind towards health instead of focusing on the symptoms that we had. And so I did that. I was so desperate. I tried like every doctor. I'm like, okay, well, let's just see what happens with this tool. And so once I started saying that, then the answers just started showing up on my path. And so I just would come across different professionals who had some wisdom and some information that helped me connect the dots, or I would come across an article or an interview. And so I think mindset is so important when we are wanting to change our life, because especially with childhood trauma, but anyone who has symptoms that are unwanted, like extra weight or physical pain, illness, it's so hard not to focus on what we don't want. But when we do that, we just maintain the status quo. And so that was probably the most powerful tool I had, was learning how to shift my mindset, because I aligned myself with well-being, and then the resources and information just appeared on my path.
Yeah. I love what you said about it's so easy to focus on what we don't want. And often we don't really focus on what we do want. When I start working with my clients, I make them go through an exercise, which is creating a vision for their future. Yeah. And becoming super clear on, if you were to wake up 3 months, 6 months from now, what does your day look like? Take me from the moment that you wake up until the moment that you go to bed. And so many people don't even know what that future looks like for you. They don't really know what their true values are. And I work with chronic dieters who their entire life have thought, I just need to lose weight. I just need to lose weight, without actually getting clear on, well, why? What is it that you really want? Because all of the actions we take have an underlying motivation. It is to feel good. Yes. It's to have positive emotions. It's to be happy. And a lot of the times we've associated losing weight with those positive feelings, when in fact that's not what they're looking for. What they really want is just freedom to eat the foods that they love, freedom to not think about food and their weight all day long, freedom to be healthy in their bodies, have energy. And that doesn't necessarily mean that weight loss comes along with it.
Yeah, I'm with you. In my book, I write about 16 pillars of trauma recovery. And the first pillar is, what's your vision? Or maybe it's number 3. Anyway, it's way up there in importance, because we have to have our why, and we have to have what we're working towards as motivation and incentive for making the hard decisions, because we don't always want to put in the effort to discipline our minds. It's hard work. There's no way around it. And when we create a vision for what we want, it's much easier to say yes to the things that will lead us in that direction. Because I tell people, every decision you make is either moving you towards your vision or away from your vision. And so when you have a really strong vision, you're more likely to access your will, which helps you make those hard decisions.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I do this exercise with any decision that I make, and I obviously teach my clients, it's called the front porch test. And it's, imagine yourself on your front porch at 80 years old, and you're looking back on the life that you've lived. Are the decisions that you're making right now going to make you look back with regret or with joy and pride? And whenever I don't know if I should make a decision, or I feel the fear, I feel the discomfort because something is something I've never done before, I always ask myself, will I regret not even trying? And a lot of the times the decisions that we make, especially when it comes to dieting and the way that we talk to our bodies, it's not really aligned with the values that we say that we have. Right. And there's such a cognitive dissonance there about what we say we really care about and the actions that we take in order to get there.
I love that technique. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to realize, like, we aren't here for that long of a period of time. It goes quickly. Mm-hmm. And I think we all want to live our best lives. And the things that we're really scared to do are the very things that we most need to do in
Yes.
order to accelerate our own personal growth, which allows us to live a more vibrant and happy life. So I think identifying what our fears are and looking at what's holding us back is a really important thing to do in transcending our limitations.
100%. I want to talk about the concept of cycle breaking. And so have you ever worked, you mentioned that you work with family therapy, and I'm sure that you've worked with young kids. And have you ever worked in terms of body image and our relationship with food, and how the way that we are raised in our childhood can affect our relationship with food and our bodies and our eating habits in turn in adulthood?
Yeah, I actually am leading a group right now called Body Solidarity. And so I have several people in that group who struggle, a lot of them with physical appearance, weight issues. And one of the most important things we do is look at why we struggle with this particular issue. And it always goes back to childhood. And it's not just like what our parents modeled for us with food and body image, but how they treated us, because food is a metaphor for nurturing. And so for people who weren't well nurtured growing up, we're going to have a tendency to overeat or choose foods that are more comfort foods than nutritious foods as a way of doing some self nurturing to compensate for the lack of nurturing we had growing up. And so I like to look at how food is a metaphor for what we didn't get as kids. And once we have started connecting the dots to how we were treated as kids, as well as looking at the societal implications for how we are brainwashed, around food and body image, and how all of that together creates where we are right now. And so connecting the dots about how we were treated, not just around food, but in general, has a lot to do with why people eat the way they do and treat their bodies the way they do. I think one of the most important things I teach people is that your body is on your side. I think in our society, we are so conditioned to see our body as the enemy if it's not doing what we want it to do, if it's not the right size, if we feel aches and pains. And I challenge people to think, why would your body intentionally be against you? And in most cases, if not all cases, when people feel their bodies against them, it's because they felt their parents were against them. And so they've sort of internalized that relationship with their body to mimic the relationship they had with their parents. And so a lot of the work is just drawing those connections about why people treat their bodies the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps to start break the cycle.
And I completely agree that your body is always on your side, and it's always trying to send you signals and messages. And we seem to understand that when it comes to certain bodily functions, when our eyes start getting heavy, when we start yawning, we know that's our body sending us signs of, you got to get some sleep, you got to get some rest. When we feel worn down, or even when we feel uncomfortable, we know that our bladder is full, we know we need to pee. But when it comes to eating, it's almost as if at one point we've been taught that we can't trust our bodies, that our bodies don't want what's best for us, that society is out to get us and processed food is this devil, when really it's not. We can't focus so much on the specific types of food and make them the devil, or constantly be at war against our bodies and against food. We need to work with our bodies, because really your body want what's best for you. It's telling you what foods feel good, don't feel good. But we've learned to stop listening to it.
It's so true. And once we can see our body as our partner and our ally, then that's when we can really start making some transformation. And one of the other things I like to teach people is how our relationship with our body is a metaphor for other issues in our lives. And so I'll invite people to think about, like, what's another challenge you have in your life? What's bothering you? And so, for example, someone might say, my husband's not a very good communicator, and I don't like that. So then we'll investigate, well, how's your communication with your body? Are you listening to your body? And so a point of intervention for me with my clients is then to focus on that relationship, how they're listening to their body, because I feel like the body is like a main source of intervention, that if we can specifically address the communication with our body, then that relationship with our partner and the communication will then naturally unfold, because there's this principle, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so if we can focus on the body as the point of intervention, then the benefits generalize to the other challenges that we're facing.
Absolutely. I want to move to looking at the parents' role, because I know that a lot of moms are going to be listening to this, and I work with a lot of moms who have young daughters, and the main motivation for starting to work with me or to doing that work to heal their relationship with food is always, I don't want my kids to grow up with the same issues that I had. And as much as we could avoid talking negatively about food, about our bodies in front of our kids, kids learn from what we do, not what we say. They learn to model people's behaviors and mindsets and habits. And so what would you say is some advice for moms who want to break that cycle? Maybe they developed their own relationship with food because of their mothers, and they want to start breaking that cycle so that it ends here. What is some advice, and what are some tips and strategies to start being a cycle breaker?
Well, people don't always like to hear this part, but
that's my favorite kind.
Whatever it is our kids are going through that triggers us is a mirror reflecting back to us what we need to heal within ourselves. And so specifically with regards to seeing our kids struggle with food, we have to explore, what is that showing me? So is my kid having a lot of control issues around food, really refusing to eat a lot of things and having a lot of rigidity around food? Then I have to look and say, what's my rigidity around food? And how can I heal that in myself? Because once again, as we heal ourselves, we can naturally see things change in our environment, whether it's with our partner or our kids or coworkers. That always the source of intervention like comes within. And I know, like, as a parent myself, like, we tend to want to sort of think like, how can I fix my kids' issue around this? Mm-hmm. And that's usually an indicator there's something that we're not seeing or not ready to see or willing to see. Mm-hmm. So that's
I completely agree. And this is pretty unrelated, but I've been reading a lot of books about relationships. And one thing that we're constantly doing, everyone is doing this, is we're thinking, okay, how do I find the right person? How do I look for the right person? And I actually had one of my friends who felt like, she kept telling me, I want to find someone who's going to make me feel safe, who's going to make me feel secure. And we very rarely look within and say, well, are you being that person in a relationship? Are you being that person who's going to make someone else feel safe, someone else feel secure? Because if you're not looking inwards and asking yourself, well, whatever I'm looking for in people around me, am I portraying that within myself? Then how can you attract that in other people? Or how can you help your kids have that good relationship with food if fundamentally you're not being that person?
Exactly. And the other caveat about relationships is, what we didn't get as kids, we're going to have this subtle expectation that other people are going to fulfill those unmet needs from childhood. It's not always so subtle. Maybe I should say unconscious. We don't always know we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And so if we're seeking those like safety and being rescued, from a partner, then we're expecting them to give us what we wanted from our parents. And so that's, again, another indicator. We got to go inside and be that to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard, I can't remember who said it, but one of my mentors, someone I follow, was saying, ask yourself which parent you crave its love the most, whether that was your dad or your mom. And whoever it was, ask yourself, what did that parent need you to be in order to get that love? Mm-hmm. And so, for example, for me, no doubt it was my dad. And for him, it was someone who was hardworking, someone who was productive. I come from a family of high achieving kids. We're five kids. I'm the youngest of five, always having to prove myself. And
Right.
so the personality you develop is all of those things that you thought you needed to be for that parent whose love you crave the most.
Wow, I love that. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're so clever as kids, trying to figure out what does it take to feel the safest to get our needs met. And so we will
Mhm.
adapt ourselves. And the problem with that is it separates us from who we truly are.
Yeah.
And in my work of helping people break this cycle, like primarily that's what we're working towards is returning back to your true nature and getting rid of all of those programs and all those patterns that you used to adapt who you were to be safe. And once we reconnect with our true self, our essence, then our life just flows so much better.
Mhm.
Then food issues are become non-issues because we just naturally love ourselves and want to do what's best for us instead of forcing it.
Yeah. So, what are some of the exercises or some of the strategies that you use with your clients who need to work through their childhood traumas? Or, I mean, trauma can seem like a big word, but I think there are definitely different levels of trauma. And I think everyone has had some kind of trauma in their life. For me,
Yes.
I consider my body image issues to have started from being in a synchronized swimming sport, which is very body image focused. It might not necessarily qualify as trauma, as that deep and intense experience, but it was traumatic. It was a long trauma that changed my beliefs around food and my body. So, what are some exercises, strategies that anyone who's listening who feels like, okay, maybe I have some unresolved issues from my childhood, whether it was the way that I was raised or the way that my parents treated me, how can they start working through that?
The first step really is awareness, like increasing awareness about what is triggering you, because anything that triggers you is bumping into that wound from childhood. And so the first step is increasing awareness because we often go through life just kind of going through the motions. We're addicted to our patterns, our ways of doing things. And I also list in my book, like all of the different um, emotional patterns, relationship patterns, and issues in our physical body that are often associated with trauma. And so as we increase our awareness, we start connecting the dots about why we're doing what we're doing. And in my work with people, I use an approach called logosynthesis, which is a really powerful mind, body, spirit approach of looking at what's not working well in your adult life right now. And through a series of questions, I help people identify like the root cause of that. So, for example, if someone feels really triggered because their partner isn't like helping clean up the kitchen or not following through with things he or she says they're going to do, then we can get really overreactive to that. And so we want to help find like what's that patterning from childhood that's causing you to be so reactive. And so by going to the original wound and doing some healing work around that, there's a lot of good trauma approaches, EMDR, somatic experiencing, emotion freedom technique. Those are all really great techniques. For deep wounds, it's really helpful to work with a practitioner because it's complicated.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, gaining awareness and finding the right person to help guide you through the process. And of course, inner child healing work, I think, is should be an important part of anyone's childhood trauma recovery because we get fragmented when we experience things. We dissociate and disconnect from who we are. And we need help putting ourselves back together.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the holistic psychologist's work?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I resonate a lot with what she has to say.
Yeah, me too. When you were talking about doing some of that inner child work, that's kind of what popped up to my mind. So when you're talking about bringing awareness to your patterns, I feel like it's easier said than done, right? And I always say to my clients, awareness is the first step to change. Most people don't even know because we live life on autopilot, right? I was talking about this with my clients this week, and we were talking about how I think the main reason why so many people get stuck in the same patterns, the same habits, is because we live in such a fast-paced society that there's no more time for silence. There's no more time for pausing and questioning, okay, what am I feeling right now? What am I thinking? And why do I keep repeating these same patterns? Do you have any strategies that you use in order to start bringing that awareness, whether that is journaling or, putting things on your phone or reminders or whatever that is that help you help them break, at least not necessarily break those patterns, but at least take a little pause and reflect on them before they move on to the next thing?
One of the tools I really like is called morning pages, and you might be familiar with this. But the idea is the first thing you do as soon as you wake up, before you even get out of bed or do anything, is you write 3 pages of free association writing, just whatever comes out. And one, it helps immensely emotionally because you're sort of dumping onto the paper things that you could be carrying in your head, throughout the day. And when we just do that free association writing, we can get a lot of ahas, especially when our mind is slowed down before it gets really busy throughout the course of the day. So I often recommend that to people. But just to go back to vision, if we have goals for ourselves, then we are going to become more mindful if it's something we really want to achieve. So if I want a healthier relationship with my partner, if I want a better relationship with food, with my kids, if I want to feel healthier in my body, and I make clear goals about that, then I'm going to be more likely to notice when I am behaving in a way that's not moving me towards those goals.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of people come to me after some kind of crisis because we live in that anesthesia stage of unconsciousness, like lack of awareness of why we're doing what we're doing until some crisis hits.
Mm-hmm.
And so for some people, they've had it with their weight, they've had it with not feeling well. And other times it requires like a car accident, a divorce, a job change that's unwanted, conflict with children. A lot of people come to see me because they're not being the parents that they want to be, and they can't tolerate that.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of cases, people are ready for change because they're tired of being miserable.
Yeah.
We don't have to get to that point in order to make changes. And so I think the other alternative is just for people to ask themselves, like, what do I really want for my life? And what am I doing that's making it hard for me to achieve goals? Like, they have to really, Sabrina, what it really comes down to is choice. Do I choose to have a vibrant and fulfilling life? If so, I gotta get more introspective.
Yeah. And that's uncomfortable work. And I think that's why so many people, at least in my audience, move towards dieting, because dieting, as much as it makes you miserable, as much as it robs you from a good quality of life, social life, emotional life, physical life, it's easy in the sense that you don't have to look inwards. You don't have to uncover the uncomfortable root causes of why do I keep numbing myself? Why do I keep overeating? Is it something about, I've had people uncover that they were really unhappy in their marriage, which they didn't realize was why they turned to food, or they were really unhappy at their job. And it's the kind of work that's really uncomfortable to do. But what's the alternative? The alternative is to keep zombieing through your life and numbing yourself until, again, you find yourself on your front porch and you wonder where your entire life went because you refuse to do some of that uncomfortable but very fulfilling work.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with one of my group members about how we have to be mindful and intentional about the relationship with our body. And the question was, but if my body looked better, I would feel more confident. And I was like, if that would happen, your body would be robbing you of the opportunity to figure out why you're unhappy with your body in the first place, because it's not just your body that you're unhappy with.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor for so many other parts of your life. And some people weren't quite grasping that. And I said, well, think about, there's some other clinical people in the room, therapists. And I was like, those parents who bring their child to therapy and say, I'll change after she changes, meaning the child. And people are like, oh, okay, I get that better now. The child will not change before the parent, just like our body. will not change before we change what's going on inside us, with our minds and the way we treat ourselves. And so an unwanted body shape, size, sensation is an invitation for inward looking.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. And I hear this from everyone is, I would be more confident if I lost, 20 pounds. And the truth is that what I hear from every single person I've ever worked with is I look back on pictures when I was 20 years old and I was 50 pounds lighter and I still hated my body and what I would do to go back to that body and love that body. And again, body image issues happen at every size. I have been 20 pounds lighter, extremely underweight, what I thought was an attractive body, and I hated my body more than I do now. And we wake up some mornings and we look in the mirror and we feel really good about it. And then the next day we feel like crap and we don't want to look in the mirror. Your body hasn't changed that much in 2 days. All that's changed is how you feel about yourself and in the context of your life on that day. And so no matter how much you change your body, if you don't change how you feel about yourself in the process, it doesn't matter. You're going to hate your body at any size and it's never going to be enough.
That's exactly true. And I realized after reflecting on issues with our bodies, I realized it is universal. Like no one is 100% happy with their body. Like you said, no matter, if someone is perfectly beautiful by societal standards and has the perfect body size, there's still something to be unhappy about, like the need to then attain that and the need to, or the question, like, do people only like me because I'm, so beautiful? And I was contemplating, like, why do we all have issues with our body? And I realized it's because all of our issues are perfect for us because of what we're here to do in our lives. I watched a YouTube video. I reference it in my book. I was just amazed by it. The choreography, these strong, beautiful, graceful bodies, just really moved me. I kept watching it over and over because I was just so, taken by it, because I have had a more fragile body. I haven't been able to do the things I've wanted to do, travel, dance, take long hikes. And through a person who is supporting me through my healing, pointed out that my body issues were perfect for me, because if I was physically capable of doing everything I wanted to do, it would interfere with my mission in life. If I were busy traveling and hiking and doing all those things, I wouldn't be committed to my own internal growth. I wouldn't have spent so much time on my book and creating, the programs I have for people and really evolving myself as much as I could. And so in a way, having a more limited body was perfect for me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that I'm not still working to get stronger and still heal some of the challenges in my body. But maybe someone who struggles with weight is meant to be, ultimately their mission in life is to help people learn to love their bodies. And they first have to master that first.
Yeah.
And so, or whether it's physical appearance, if someone can just really accept how they look, even if their body doesn't look like what our society says is beautiful, if they can learn to love themselves and project that out, like, what a service to humanity.
Yeah.
And so my invitation to people with whatever they struggle with their body is, how is this in service to the mission in your life? And can you appreciate whatever limitation it is, mm-hmm. because it's really here to help you do what you came to Earth to do in the first place.
Yeah. And I think it's really important as we wrap things up is to remember that you can love your body at whatever size it is and still strive to achieve optimal health. And actually, the best way to start creating health promoting behaviors, which is what I focus on. I don't focus on let's get you to lose 20 pounds. I focus on how can we get you to change your behaviors, change your habits so that you take care of yourself from a place of compassion. The only way to really change your behavior permanently is to do it from a place of self-love. And so by loving your body where it is right now, or at least accepting it, at least accepting where it's at right now, you are a lot more likely to want to take care of yourself and to actually genuinely improve your health than if you're constantly fighting it and rejecting it and coming from a place of negative self-talk, which is just we didn't get to talk about self-sabotage today, but which is just gonna result in more self-sabotage.
It's so true. It's so
Yeah.
true. I think, if people could really know what it's going to be like when they love themselves, they wouldn't have so much resistance to doing it because it really feels amazing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
feels amazing.
Yeah. And
And
as
it's
someone who didn't used to love myself, I think what's awesome, and I'm sure you've probably felt that way, is to have been on both sides and to just want to shake people and say, do you know how much your entire life could change if it's like you were talking about before, if you make that, it's a decision. It's a decision that a lot of people don't want to make because they think I can't possibly love myself in the life that I'm in the marriage that I'm in the way that I've been, in the size that I'm in. You can, regardless of your circumstances.
And I think having a community is incredibly important because we have to be able to hear other people say, me too, I struggle with that too.
Mm-hmm.
And for people to root for you and for people in the group to say, this is what I did this week, which can inspire someone else. And so we don't have to go it alone,
Yeah.
which is important to realize as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So some key takeaways from today is number one, bringing awareness to your patterns. And what you mentioned was this 3-page free flowing exercise. I know that a lot of people who are listening might be overwhelmed at the thought of 3 pages every morning. You're waking up and your alarm and your kids are yelling. And so maybe just start with a couple of sentences, or just start with the habit of pausing before the day starts, before you check your phone, before you get all of these distractions, and all of this noise, and just pausing. And what I really like to do, I don't know if you do this as well, is just number one, I have this 2-minute journal. And the first thing that I write is what I'm letting go of. Whether you had a fight with your husband or you feel guilty about something you did, whatever it is, just letting go of it because it's not serving you to hold on to it. And then what I like to focus on is, okay, what am I grateful for? What are the amazing things in my life that whether that's 2 or 3 things, it can be something as little as, I had an amazing phone call with my mom yesterday. And then what do I want to focus on today? And that can be setting those intentions for, what do I want to look for? How do I want to show up today? What are the values that I want to be aligned with? I think that just having, whether that's, like I said, 2 minutes or writing free flowing, what's on your mind, and just getting clear, I think just becoming really acquainted with your thoughts, with your subconscious and what it's thinking, it's what it's saying, is going to help you bring that awareness.
I love that idea. I think how we start our day is incredibly important. And so we just have to assess what we have time to do and what feels like the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak, like what's going to be the most powerful impact for our day, given the time that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I could talk to you for hours, but
Same.
thank you so much for coming on today. So anyone who wants to become a cycle breaker, who wants to work through their childhood trauma, how can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Just go to my website, which is mindikessler.com. And I have all my programs and offerings listed on there. And I'm happy to give your listeners a discount to the Body Solidarity group that I do. I'll have an online course soon as well, and happy to support them in that way.
Amazing. Well, I will leave all of that in the show notes, of course. Thank you so much, Mindi, for coming on. You are a beautiful soul and you have so much to share. And I really appreciate you for taking the time today.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. It was a blast.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.